Hi guys, thanks for the click. Now I need to say something super quickly before getting into the main vid. I came to Harbin to run through China's frozen city, China's skiing resort with a cute Russian theme. But I discovered during my post-production research that this place wasn't even Chinese. It was pure Russia, built by the Tsar with its own incredible story. But that discovery was just the beginning. I learned that this city became the absolute epicenter of the 20th century's history, right up there with Berlin. A story of war, atrocities, secrets, and a resilience that I never knew existed. So this isn't just a run tour. I strongly felt I needed to try to tell the untold story of one of the 20th century's most dramatic cities. And it starts right here. Hey guys, this is Peter. I'm in China, but it's no China that I've ever seen before. I'm in Harbin, right on the border between China and Russia, and today I'm going to take you on a 10k lap around the town, where as soon as I can start my stopwatch, which will be in 3. Oh, it started now. Okay, let's go. Now, before I give my preview of this run, I need to tell you a little bit more about this amazing building that you're looking at right now. This is St. Sophia's, built in 1907 by around 5,000 Russians trying to escape the Bolsheviks over in Moscow, over in European Russia, who thought they'd be home within a year. In fact, they stayed about 30 years before Japan invaded this part of China and took Harbin. But I'll talk more about St. Sophia's and that history later in this video. But I also need to say, Harbin is not just a relic. The city's current Chinese culture, food and future is right here. I'll talk about these in the video, in steel glass and a new generation. But right now, let's head deeper into the city as I try to find my way to Harbin's most famous tourist area, the Zhongyang walking street, and try not to get lost along the way. Now, before we dive deeper into Harbin's wild story, please subscribe. It really does help to encourage me to not only create these videos, but to also spend the time researching and bringing these stories to life for you. Now, back to Harbin's history. Alright, over this first look at Harbin as we jog towards Zhongyang Avenue, let's dive deeper into the incredible history of this city. Why is this city even here, and how did it come to be? But first, take a good look at those European-looking buildings that we're going past. They're not just modern replicas, they're real Russian structures that have been here since the city was built. They've really stood the test of time, telling the story of a city that, believe it or not, really shouldn't even exist. Okay, imagine the stories that these walls could tell if they could speak. So now let's rewind back to 1898. This frozen part of Manchuria was just a quiet fishing village back then, a serene spot where life moved slowly. But then Russia made a bold proposition to China. Help us build the Chinese Eastern Railway to speed up travel to Vladivostok on the Russian east coast, and we'll protect you from Japan. It sounded like a win-win, right? But little did they know what would follow. Fast forward to the construction phase. 30,000 Chinese laborers were out there laying tracks through bone-chilling minus 30 degrees centigrade blizzards, while Russian engineers were cozying up in their warm mansions. Can you picture it? By 1901, the railway was complete, but here's the kicker. Most of those workers didn't even leave. Harbin then exploded into a boomtown filled with Russian churches, Jewish banks, and let's be real, absolutely no urban planning. It was just two empires shaking hands with Russia clearly in charge of the place. Then came 1917. You remember what happened in 1917? The Bolsheviks won the Russian Revolution. And suddenly, Harbin transformed again into the world's weirdest refugee camp. Overnight, about 5,000 white Russians arrived, fleeing from the Bolsheviks. Not just soldiers, but also opera singers smuggling pearls, Tsarist generals demanding their normal tea service, and even circus performers. This was when St. Sophia's Church was actually built by those refugees, using gold leaf icons salvaged from burned churches. They opened delis selling real Russian black bread and insisted on speaking Russian for the next 15 years. It was a cultural whirlwind that shaped the early identity of Harbin. Okay, so I think you can probably hear that I'm saying that off a script. I did write it down. I did some research on the history and I can't remember it all, I have to admit. This history has been scripted, and I'm reading that. Sorry if it sounds a little wooden, but I do feel like the history is worth telling, so I'm doing my best with that. Then in 1932, of course, Japan invaded Manchuria and dubbed Harbin Manchuria's Paris. But spoiler alert, it really wasn't. They transformed the city again into a spy hub with jazz clubs hiding military operations and a vibrant nightlife masking a much darker agenda. Lucky with traffic lights so far. And yes, that dark chapter included the infamous Unit 731, which we'll talk about later, not on this introduction. Okay? But for now, let's enjoy the journey through history. So after World War II ended in 1945, the Soviets rolled in, claiming they'd liberated Harbin. And that wasn't the Russians that the Chinese had met before. That wasn't the Russian Empire. This was the new communist Russians, the Soviet Empire. So what really happened was that the Soviets looted the city of almost everything, right down to its light bulbs. Harbin was left in disarray, a shadow of its former self. But it wasn't the end for this city. By 1952, China had reclaimed it, marking a significant shift in control. So how did this Russian Harbin become Chinese? It wasn't just politics, it was a mixture of time, culture and geography. With the Chinese Civil War starting up again after World War II, Harbin became a key strategic point for the Chinese Communist Party. The brutal winters kept many outsiders away, but the Chinese stayed strong here, leading to a remarkable migration of Chinese people into the city. Then, when the CPC gained power, Harbin transformed again. The unique blend of Russian and Chinese cultures flourished, with the distinct Chinese-Russian food being a delicious symbol of this fusion. The culinary scene thrived, showcasing the best of both worlds, from hearty borscht to savoury dumplings. I got lost. Alright, let's get back to the run. Today, Harbin is still a vibrant hub that reflects its rich history and resilience. Past and present coexist here, shaped by the legacies of wars, revolutions and cultural exchanges. And now Harbin, as you can see in the video, is a time warp where Russian babushkas sell Russian dolls next to AI startup companies. It's an extraordinary city that wears its history proudly while also embracing the future. You can feel the energy when you're in Harbin. It's right here in the air. And the new Harbin Opera House, which we'll see later in the video, is a China's new flex. It's a stunning architectural marvel that stands out as a symbol of progress and innovation. But again, like I said, more on that later after we explore more of the historic downtown Harbin area. Alright, that's the end of our little introduction to the history of Harbin. So I'm going to go into some detail about various aspects of that when we've got a little bit more time in the run. So I'll just be quiet for a few seconds now so you can hear the sounds of Harbin a little bit more right now, okay? Talk to you soon. Okay, while we're waiting for the lights, I'm at Zhongyang Road, Zhongyang Avenue, which is I think it's the main sort of touristy kind of strip inside Harbin, but it's an old shopping area anyway. So we're going to run right through it. Now, as we start our run along Zhongyang Avenue in the early morning light, it is the early morning, I want to share some fascinating stories about how to make this avenue really special. And with almost no crowds, as you can see at this hour of the morning, it really feels like I've got the street almost all to myself, which is great. There's no way I could do a run like this later in the day, around lunchtime, especially in the evening. It's really packed in here. Okay, now I should also quickly mention that it's in the middle of summer right now in Harbin. I'm doing this in the middle of summer. And as we pass by my hotel, which is a really cool hotel in a fantastic location, as you can see, I remind you that it only costs about $50 US per night, right here in the heart of the city. Cece is in there, sleeping in, while I'm out here running. I'm the crazy one out here running each day, but I'm happy with that. It feels a little bit like I get two different types of holidays by doing these morning runs. As we jog, let's take a moment to appreciate the lively atmosphere around us, even though it's quite empty right now. You can see there's a lot here. You can see that almost all of the shops here are food related, which really says a lot about Harbin being such a foodie city. With the aroma of freshly cooked dumplings already wafting through the air. You can't smell them, but I certainly could. And trust me, Cece and I did have them for breakfast while we were here. And speaking of culture, just a short detour from here is the Jewish Synagogue, which is our next stop. It's a remarkable structure built in the early 20th century, and it stands as a testament to the once thriving Jewish community in Harbin. Did you know, and I'll say more about this later, that in the early 1900s, Harbin was home to about 25,000 Jews, which is pretty incredible, right in China. They played a significant role in the city's development, contributing to its economy, culture, and even its education system. It's about 25 degrees centigrade, which is pretty warm considering that Harbin is almost always below freezing during winter, and it does get down to about minus 30 degrees centigrade, in the winter. So anyway, this street isn't just a thoroughfare. It's a vibrant tapestry woven with history, culture, and a little bit of intrigue. Everything in Harbin has some intrigue. Zhongyang Street, or Avenue, or Central Street, is the heart and soul of Harbin. So picture this. It stretches for over a kilometre, lined with European-style buildings that are like a stroll through a living museum. Each structure has its own story, reflecting the city's rich history as a melting pot of cultures. You'll notice that there are Russian, Jewish, and Chinese architectural influences blending seamlessly along the avenue. It's a beautiful reminder of Harbin's very cosmopolitan past. So as you would have just noticed, while I was talking, I just turned off Zhongyang Avenue and I've turned left into another street. This is heading directly for the Jewish Synagogue, okay? So this is a side street. It's worthwhile, and you can still see similar architecture as well. Now I've got a little bit of time. I'm just going to take you on a quick tour of the screen of what you're looking at. So in the top left-hand corner, you can see how long the tour's gone for. Next to that is how many kilometers we've run. On the top right-hand corner, it's a bit more crowded. You see a map of where we're going. The aqua-coloured arrow is where we are right now. You can see there it's heading down the street away from Zhongyang Avenue. And then right in the far, and you can see the different attractions, I've got them written on there as well. In the top right-hand corner, you can see my heart rate, power, pace, and speed, and other thing. And then the topography is on the bottom corner, along with the time and the date. Okay, now we're at the Harbin Jewish Synagogue. Can you see the Star of David? I'll tell you more about that in the voiceover. Okay. And here is the voiceover. Now, as we cross the street, let's dive deeper into its history. It was built in 1909, and it wasn't just a place of worship. It was really the heart of Harbin's Jewish community, which peaked in the early 20th century. Imagine a time when this area was buzzing with life, filled with Jewish people who brought their traditions and an entrepreneurial spirit. Synagogue itself is a great example of Romanesque architecture. At its height, this place served as a hub for social and cultural gatherings. But like many stories in Harbin, this one has its ups and downs. The rise of anti-Semitism in the 1930s led to a dramatic decline in the Jewish population here. Many families fled, seeking safety elsewhere in places like Shanghai, Israel, the USA, and even back to Europe. The synagogue fell silent for many years. It became neglected and deteriorated. In the decades that followed, however, the synagogue began to see a revival. In the 1990s, efforts were made to restore this historic landmark. Today, it stands as not only a place of worship, but it's also a concert hall and a museum. It serves as a bridge connecting the past with the present, showcasing the contributions of the Jewish community. I'm going to go down there later. Should I go down there now? Maybe. It's a very busy looking morning street food area. I wasn't planning on this, but just to show you that Harbin is alive. And this is what Zhongyang Avenue will be like at night. Just probably enough. Some very weak beer. They love their bread here. And they love Russian sausages as well. There's probably some, but this is all morning food. It looks like some kind of bowser. Oh, they're really sort of sausage pancake. Here's the sausages, but I'm not eating right now. I'll eat later. That's cool. I'm glad this place was, I came past this place. This is actually more traditional Northern Chinese breakfast food, the wraps. Very popular up here. And I'll get going again soon. But yeah, and some fruit drink. All right, let's go. Good. I got the traffic again. I'll just do a sweep while I'm waiting. Ni hao. Ni住在 Harbin 吗？对。喜欢吗？喜欢吗？喜欢。今天太热。今天天热。对对，好热。Bye bye. Bye bye. Okay, let's go. So while we're on our way back to Zhongyang Road, I want to just explain why I'm making this video, apart from wanting to make an informational video about Harbin, okay? And it really stems from COVID. During COVID, I was in lockdown, like many people. I was in China, and I managed to get a treadmill because I wanted to run every day, and I couldn't go outside, of course. So that was fantastic to be able to do that, but I had a problem, and that was I got really bored pretty quickly. If you ever run a lot on a treadmill, you'll know what I'm talking about. But I found at home, I started watching YouTube videos, and that was okay. But what I really enjoyed, I found running videos on YouTube of people that had done running tours in their home city, and that was really great. So at that point, I thought I should make these too. I should make these about where I run. So that's partly why or a lot of the reason why I'm actually making these videos. I do talk more than the other videos that I used to watch because I think it is good to be able to understand where it is that you are running through or walking through. But it's not just about running videos. I also think it's also good to just give information about these places too, and that's why I also add talking to it as well. If you don't want the talking, and that's fine, please just feel free to turn the sound off completely, put some music on, and then just use it as a walking tour of that place, or a running tour if you're on a treadmill as well. Okay, back onto Zhongyang Lu. By the way, there are lots of ghost stories here in Harbin, and here's one. The story goes, somewhere along Zhongyang Lu, a stunning Russian ballerina performed here and fell in love with a Russian officer who suddenly left the city, abandoning her. Devastated, she leapt from the top floor of that building, and now late at night, staff still swear sometimes they see a ghostly woman in a white tutu on the top floor still dancing alone to a ghostly waltz. Another red light. Ni hao. Ni hao. 你会英语吗？你会英语吗？英语啊。对对 A little? How are you? Do you live here? Yes. Yeah, you live in Harbin? You like it? Yes. It's very hot today. Today's very hot. Yes. Yeah. How cold? Yeah, I'm going to the concert hall along the river.
You have one city? A city walk?
City run. Bye bye. Very good. 谢谢. Bye bye. 再见. So now as we're heading more north, leaving the southern end with its market energy behind us, and this half feels different the further north that we go. It's a bit more grand, a bit more kind of deliberate. A lot of these buildings were the banks, the hotels, and trading companies back in the day, and you can almost feel the ambition of the place as we get further north. And this area was really known as the Moscow of the East that they were trying to build. there's a funny little thing here. You see the cave entrance there. There's an underground supermarket souvenir shop. It's pretty funny. Anyway, but what's amazing about each of these buildings is a little bit different. Some of them are pure Art Nouveau, and then you can get the it looks like a fur trader, that guy. Then you can get the heavy neoclassical styles, and like I said, these are not just replicas. These were real buildings that made up, that grew organically, with different architects leaving their mark. First, of course, the Russians, and then after them, other European communities. Polish architects were here, German people were here, and of course the Jewish community that we just learned about at Synagogue. They all contributed to the mosaic that we can see here. Imagine the scene 100 years ago with horse-drawn carriages, merchants in their fur hats, the sound of Russian and Chinese, and half a dozen other languages mixing in the air. It really was a true international crossroad of empires. And our next target is just ahead. If you can just see it in the distance, you can feel the place starting to open it up. We are making for the flood control monument on the banks of the Songhua River. But the river wasn't just a pretty backdrop. It's really the reason Harbin was here in the first place. Because before Harbin was a Russian railway town, before it was a crossroads, it was a river landing. The Songhua River has always been a vital transport route in this region. Before, the Russians needed a shortcut for the Trans-Siberian Railway, and Harbin was chosen as their headquarters. So as I said earlier, almost overnight, a small fishing village exploded into a massive construction site. Christmas! Engineers, labourers and soldiers flooded in. They built the railway yards, the stations, and then the city to support it all. I think I gotta go under here. And the street that we're running on here, this was one of the very first that was laid out. And as you can see, this street is now going under. It's an underpass to keep away from the traffic of the other street going over the top. So I'll go through this little tunnel. Yep. Ah, badminton. Hello. Da. Oh. So anyway, this street was originally called Kitayskaya in Russian, meaning Chinese street, which is kind of a weird name because it quickly became the center for the Russian community. And then after the 1917 Russian Revolution, when Harbin really got its soul, when the White Russian refugees and the thousands of families that arrived and turned a railway fishing engineering town into a truly European-style city in the heart of northeastern China. Very Russian-looking McDonald's. And now I don't know about you, but I really could feel the past while I was going up Zhongyang Street. It really was the center of Harbin's history. But now I'm going to leave that history for a moment while I just come to the next stop along the way, which is the flood control monument. Now, if you're enjoying the video so far, or if you find it interesting, please give it a like. And if you'd really like to support what I'm doing with these videos, please also consider subscribing. Now this is the Harbin flood control monument. There's a big river near us we're going to go to in a second, and it used to flood a lot and take a lot of lives. So this is a monument dedicated to that. I'll give you more information in the voiceover. So now here's the voiceover. First off, this monument also shows Harbin's flood war with the Songhua River. That's the name of the river. If you look at the monument, you'll see two clear stripes. And sorry, you'll have to go back a little bit to see the monument again. The top one is a dark stripe on a light coloured stone. This stripe shows the exact flood water level for a huge flood in 1957. But the good news is the light coloured stone shows how high a dike was built to protect the city, and it worked. Looking further down, there's a light coloured stripe on top of some dark coloured carved stone. This was the height of the flood in 1932, where there was no flood control and tens of thousands of people died when the city was submerged. It's amazing to think that the city and people were safe from the higher flood from the hard work of the people who built that huge dike, which of course is what this monument is dedicated to. But where's the dike now, you might ask? house because the flood war has moved upstream. Today there is a network of huge dams that controls the water long before it even gets here, so they don't need a monstrous wall in the city centre anymore. In fact, there was an even bigger flood in 1998, but that was fully controlled before it got to Harbin, so the city was safe even though there is just a nice low-level promenade, which I'm now on, which connects the city to the river. I'm going to go to the bathroom. Okay, back out. Very clean bathroom, wow. But no, I wasn't going to show you inside. But now let's talk more about the Songhua River on the left-hand side here. And remember, Harbin is here because of this river. So let's dive into it, pardon the pun. It starts about 1,500 kilometers away at a place called the Heaven Lake in a volcanic crater right on the border between China and North Korea. It flows down from the mountains past ancient forests, and by the time it reaches here in Harbin, it's the largest tributary of the even bigger Amur River. And that's the key, the Amur River, because that river's ultimate destination is the Pacific Ocean in Russia. That's why the Russians built Harbin here in 1898 for their railway construction. This was a perfect point to transport materials for their Trans-Siberian line. So Harbin as a city was born from that single geographic fact. From its sacred source to its ocean destination, this river became an early economic soul of the city. Before railways, this river was the main street. In summer, steam ships carried soybeans, timber and wheat down towards the Amur. Wait a second, I'll go through here. Down towards the Amur in the sea. In the winter, horse-drawn sleds raced across its ice. Harbin became one of the biggest soybean trading hubs on the planet. But that also made it a target. Its connection with the Amur made it a strategic military route. And in 1932, the Japanese invasion fleet... Really nice running track here. Really great surface. And in 1932, the Japanese invasion fleet sailed right up this river, and then during the Cold War, it was a major Soviet supply line. Control of the river meant control of the city, which meant control of this region of China. But you can't just talk about money and of war. This river is also Harbin's cultural focus. For the Russians in Harbin's early Russian history, this was a little piece of the Volga, a place for poetry and ice swimming. For the Chinese, it became a source for the Harbin Ice Festival. It became a place of lovers' walks and a place for generations of fishermen. But there's also a deep spiritual thread here. From that sacred volcano where it's born all the way to the ocean, there are many local legends of river dragons. Even today, you'll see people making small offerings by the water. It's a thread connecting ancient shamans to modern grandmothers. So what about now? The river's role has transformed again. The ports and riverboats are now mostly for tourists, and it's become the city's green lungs and playground. The promenade that we're on, they've turned the industrial waterfront into a tourism and local recreational focus for modern Harbin. So the Songhua isn't just a symbol of Harbin's birth and continued rebirth, it's literally in the middle of all of that. From its sacred source on a volcano to an essential part of Russian railways, to having got roles in wars, to a popular destination in this Chinese megacity of today. But anyway, now it's time to cross it. Okay, so this is the first bridge built across the river. It was built by Russia, and apparently Russian Tsars used to come down here. But now it's been turned into a non-functioning, like a lot of trails, and pedestrian crossing, which is awesome, and I'm going to run across it over to there. Okay, so let's go. Can I go around here? Okay. Let's do it. Ooh, glass. Yikes. Okay, so here's some more info about this really important bridge as we run over it and cross the Songhua. Like I said, this is the first Songhua river bridge, the old railway bridge. It's very spongy. And if the river was Harbin's main street before the city was really built, this bridge became its new main street once that railway was complete. For decades, almost nothing and no one got in or out of Harbin without crossing it. In fact, this was the final critical link of the Eastern Chinese Railway, completed in 1901, and the logistics were insane. Imagine shipping over 3,000 tons of steel girders, not from the ocean through the river, but overland all the way from Warsaw and Budapest and Moscow along the new Trans-Siberian Railway, which wasn't even finished yet. It didn't even reach the Pacific Ocean by this time. The Russians brought in their best bridge-making engineers and construction workers from St. Petersburg, because nothing like this had ever been attempted out here in Eastern Russia. Cool. By the way, years later, the British built important bridges in cities like Shanghai and Wuhan in China. But the distinction was that this bridge was to connect Manchuria to Moscow, rather than to help trade and commerce in Chinese colonies like the British had. The Russians saw Harbin as an inland extension of their empire, and a desire to connect European Russia to the Pacific Ocean through the railway, and this bridge was an absolutely vital link to make that happen. It was truly a strategic masterpiece of the Tsar Russia, but also a big gamble. A direct line to the warm water port of Vladivostok, bypassing the Japanese-controlled Tsushima Strait. Actually, it's a very long story that we don't have time for in this video, because that was all part of what eventually ballooned into a naval war between Russia and Japan, which Russia lost, and then which gave Japan confidence to expand further, leading to the occupation of here, of course. So the takeaway here was that the importance of this bridge made it Harbin a military asset and also a target. And that target was realized in 1932, when the Japanese Imperial Army marched into Harbin. Their first and most vital strategic objective wasn't a government building or a public square, it was this bridge. Securing it meant that they could pour troops and supplies across the river, and this bridge became an artery for the Japanese occupation of Manchuria. And it was also across this bridge that Japanese engineers and special military units would have travelled south to Unit 731. That's what I mentioned way back at St. Sophia's. It's a heavy thought running across the bridge, knowing that it supported the weight of that history as well. But I'll talk a lot more about that in a little later in this video, because it really needs its own explanation. And yes, Cece and I did visit the chilling 731 museum while we were here in Harbin, so I'll tell you what we saw in there. But okay, back to this amazing old bridge and the river that it crosses. So from up here you can really get a sense of the Songhua's power. It's over 1 kilometer wide at this point. And building it wasn't just about steel, it was a battle against nature.
Hello.
The Russians used temporary dams and giant pressurized chambers sunk into the riverbed so workers could get down under the waterline and dig out the foundations by hand, often in the freezing Harbin winters. The working conditions would have been incredibly scary, dangerous and brutal. But now for a bit of a lighter look at the bridge. Whenever you have brutal conditions and a long history, you also get stories. For example, the locals here didn't just call it a bridge, they called it the Lao Long Tie, which means the old iron dragon. And of course every old dragon has its ghosts. There's a persistent ghost story from the Japanese occupation era, and it goes that Japanese sentries stationed on the bridge in the dead of night would sometimes see a figure walking the tracks, a figure that would simply vanish when challenged. They called it the ghost of the Songhua. And perhaps it was a lost construction worker or a spirit of the river itself. But whether you believe it or not, it speaks to the weight of the past of that this structure carries. But history, like the Songhua, keeps moving. The bridge was heavily damaged by the retreating Japanese in 1945 and then rebuilt even stronger by the Soviets in the 1950s at the start of the Cold War era. It served as a vital link right up until 2014, when a new modern bridge, the one that you can see on the right hand side of us, took over the main rail traffic, including high-speed trains. And now the old dragon has been reborn again. As you can see, it's now a pedestrian walkway and a cycling path. A straight line park right across the river, linking the city esplanade on the south side to the wetland parks on the north shore. It's a place for couples to take wedding photos with the city skyline behind them. It's for fathers to teach their grandkids how and where to fish. It was a symbol of imperial ambition, then a military occupation, and now it's a place for leisurely afternoon strolls. The transformation is actually the story of Harbin itself, which again shows just how linked this bridge is to the city. So look up at the view up ahead. The old city is far behind us now, and in front of us is Harbin's Songhua Wetlands Park. It's a completely different landscape and completely different chapter in Harbin's story. We'll talk about it next, just after I first check out this little beach on the left here. Talk to you soon. Wow. I wasn't planning on doing this, but I didn't know there was a beach down here. It's a bit dirty, but it's all right. Cool, and it's very hot. Gee, like seriously. I'm gonna go up that way. I'll talk to these guys first though. 早上好。早上好。你们有养吗？
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
You too. Bye bye. Good? 好不好？ No, just 我跑步 run.
都是那个前提字。
一点点。对。
需要我们什么帮忙？
对不起，我的中文不好，我还学习danci。我
说你需要我帮你照相啊，还是需要我帮忙吗？需不需要我帮你？看海边哦。
我知道。No, I don't need. 不要，谢谢，朋友。
Go.
不现在，加油。
你们很多俄罗斯的朋友
现在跑步。
很多俄罗斯朋友40多个晚上傍晚在这游泳喝酒，乌了。
好了，谢谢。拜拜。
玩得开心啊。
You probably gathered he wanted me to go for a swim right now, and I'd love to, but I've got running business to attend to. What is that building? Should have just taken the stairs. Actually, it looks like it was a cable car thing. Oh, I could have just ran flat and caught up over there. Anyway. You know, thinking back to that guy on the beach and others that I've met here, they almost feel weirdly Australian. You know that I'm an Aussie, right? And if you've never met an Aussie, I heard a good way to describe us. It is that we are English Texans. And I think that is not only a pretty good description of us, but I also feel that Harbin people have that same friendly, no BS directness and kind of generosity. The kind where somebody might make a little joke at you, but you know it's a joke, and then they immediately offer you a beer to prove that. It feels like a gritty, genuine warmth, and that really gives me a feeling of not only being welcome here, but kind of strangely at home. It's hard to explain. I think it comes from the same place as Australians. You don't survive harsh environments, whether it's a blazing hot 45-degree summer in Australia, or a freezing cold Harbin winter, without developing a bit of a tough, look after your mate kind of solidarity. It's not the polished hospitality that you might find in some cities, but it's really the real deal, and I really do love it. I do feel good being around Harbin people. And of course, now's a good chance to say, if you want to show that you're enjoying this video, please give it a like, and if you'd really like to make friends, a subscription would be fantastic, as well as any comments or anything like that you'd like to make would be awesome as well. Middle Eastern Railway Park, and that in there goes to a really huge extensive park. I was going to run through there too, but it would just, this 10 kilometers is enough. That would turn it into like a 15k run, and it's too long for a video, I think. Okay, so now it's back to the voiceover, and you can see that we're now in a completely different world to earlier on in the city. This causeway splits the Songhua, and if you look to the left, You'll see back there, like I said, lots of parks and things in there. It's not just a few trees. This is the Songhua River National Urban Wetland Park. It's absolutely massive. We're talking about a huge green space that the city built for itself. It's like Harbin decided it needed a giant backyard, and they built everything in here, from lakes, paddle boats, forests, picnic areas, and even there's a polar bear zoo up ahead as well that's sort of connected to the wetland park. And sorry, I can't tell you what the zoo is like inside. Cece and I didn't have time to go and visit that. But anyway, these wetlands are a crucial part of today's Harbin. They help absorb any floodwaters, they filter the water, and they're a sanctuary for migrating birds. And after its heavy history, this feels like Harbin's way of giving the river back to the people and their natural environment a little, not only for work or money or war, but for life. Okay, and it's also a stark reminder of the climate. As you can see right now, it's summertime on this run, and there's lush and green everywhere. But imagine this in the depths of winter. All of this becomes frozen solid, a blinding white landscape. The fact that this city operates in such extremes is still mind-blowing to me. And it also shows the ambition that this is not just a nature preserve, it's a full-blown entertainment and recreation complex. I did do another run. I'm putting some images up on the screen now through it, but I just scratched the surface of the place. You can really spend a whole day, at least a day, more than that really, and not see it all. It's just huge and really nice in there. And it's not just parks, birds and polar bears. I did see what looked like a space museum in the middle of it as well. So I did some research into that. It's called Cosmos Park. From what I've learned about Harbin has become a hub for China's space program through the Harbin Institute of Technology. And Harbin has another nickname, which is called the Cradle of Astronauts. This group designs satellites and technology for the Chinese space, lunar and Mars mission program. And that hits a bit of a personal note for me, because years back in 2013, I was in China, my first time basically, on a research trip for eco-city design. I actually got a chance to lecture to some master's students at the Harbin Institute of Technology's campus on the other side of China in Shenzhen, where I live, about zero carbon houses and communities, something that I was busy doing in Australia at the time. To think that intellectual legacy of this city, the Cradle of Astronauts, is something that I briefly interacted with, and now here I am over a decade later running through its hometown. It's pretty cool. It was a weird full circle moment. That whole trip in 2013 was about studying China's low carbon urban future, like at the Tianjin Eco City, which I've actually done a running tour of this on this channel, and you can see that video by clicking here. I've got the link up on the screen. It really feels like two sides of the same coin. That video is about China's planned eco future, and this video that we're in right now is the one about the historical forces that shaped Harbin, one of China's most unique cities, one of the world's most unique cities really. But I'm digressing, aren't I? So let's get back to the park. You can see the full mosaic of Harbin life in here. We saw families walking and playing, retired people fishing, riding bikes and swimming, young people out jogging, just like me. It really is a vibrant cross-section of the city at leisure. And after the intensity of the bridge's history, this is a fantastic part of a modern, living, breathing Harbin. Also, this causeway is a huge part of the spine that links it all together. It's an important green connection from both the northern suburbs and the southern downtown area to the wetland park. A journey with quiet wetlands on one side and a bustling park on the other. But alright, as we continue along this beautiful part of Harbin, it's time to switch to the darkest period of Harbin's city, as well as one of the darkest and most terrifying parts of China's history as a whole. But before we start talking about that, let's just take some time to listen to the sounds around us, the sounds of the Harbin wetlands. Fast train. Okay, that train's passed, and now we have to talk about Unit 731. I have to be honest, before coming to Harbin, I didn't really know much about it. I knew there was a place in Manchuria where the Japanese Imperial Army conducted biological warfare experiments on people, similar to the experiments that the Nazis had done to Jewish and other peoples in Europe. And I knew that it was also very bad, but the details were vague to me. It was Cece who insisted that we visit this museum. And I should say that we're not big on visiting lots of museums when we travel. We prefer spending our time experiencing the living places. But she felt strongly strongly about that this one was different, that it was important, unique to this place, and something that we needed to see. And I trusted her with that. So one day while in Harbin, we took the metro to the south of the city, out to the Ping Fan district. And as we traveled, the weather turned. It started to rain. Then that rain started to pour. And then by the time we got there, it was a full-on downpour that was so heavy, we almost didn't leave the metro station. But we had umbrellas, so we did go. And we still got drenched just trying to get from the station to the museum entrance. But it felt kind of symbolic, like the sky itself was trying to wash the place clean, or maybe some kind of warning of what we were about to walk into. So as we were walking towards it, we saw it. The site is huge, and I've never been to Auschwitz, but the scale of it, the sense of a vast organized complex, it had the same chilling effect as what I imagine Auschwitz would give to visitors there. But here, the main museum building is a series of massive modern grey blocks that seem to sort of stretch off without really having a defined ending. It just kind of seems to go forever. And the museum itself seems like it's not trying to look historic, it's feels like it's being stark, somber and powerful place, a deliberate modern tomb to a terrible past. There were a lot of Chinese visitors there that day, also walking silently through the rain to the entrance, but I didn't see a single other foreigner. We showed our electronic tickets into the entrance and went inside, stepping out of the weather and into the history of the place. As soon as we stepped inside, the atmosphere had changed. It was very quiet and very heavy feeling. I took out my camera to start filming, but stopped almost immediately, and I put it away because it just felt wrong, just kind of disrespectful. This wasn't a place for a vlog, so I decided I would only take photos with no voiceover, just to remember what I was seeing. I didn't even really want to talk at all either, not even to CC. It was then that I noticed a poster for a movie about Unit 731, the one that's just had its global release now. You've probably seen it, but I hadn't heard of it then, and CC said that she had heard of it, and that she'd heard that it was very powerful. Walking through the exhibits, my vague understanding quickly sharpened into something horrifyingly clear. This wasn't a small operation. It wasn't a little side project happening alongside the real war. Unit 731 was a massive state-sanctioned facility, a hub for Japan's biological weapons program. Almost it felt like the invasion may have happened just so that 731 could be built to do these experiments. The head of it all was a man named Shiro Ishii, who was a microbiologist and a lieutenant general in the Japanese Imperial Army. The first thing that hit me was the sheer cold bureaucracy of it all. The victims were primarily Chinese of all ages, even children, and there were also Korean civilians along with some Soviet prisoners of war. But they weren't even called people. The researchers referred to them as maruta, which is the Japanese word for logs. They were dehumanized into mere test materials right from the very start. And then I learned about what was being done to them. The exhibits showed letters, photographs and models. It was pretty overwhelming. I'm going to go through a few things. They performed vivisections. That's surgery on living people, on living things, conscious people, without anesthesia to study the effects of disease. They conducted frostbite experiments on limbs, seeing how much cold a person could endure before gangrene set in. And they smashed some of them to see if they could smash while they were frozen, all to help the Japanese army fight more effectively in Manchuria's winter. They infected people with actual bubonic plague, cholera and anthrax to develop weapons. And they infected them not only in labs, but they also put people up on literal crucifixes outside and exploded germ bombs near them at different distances to see which were the most effective at spreading from airplane bombs out in the real world. This really horrified me, to see images of people arranged like Jesus Christ's crucifixion. To think that the researchers might have seen that ancient symbol of Roman cruelty and actually decided, hey, we can replicate that in their own time on living people. They also had pressure chambers to see how much force a human body could take before lungs would start to rupture. They did this to adults as well as to children. This was no random brutality. It was systematic, scientific, and meticulously documented. But the most shocking part for me to learn was that they apparently didn't even see it as cruel, because they didn't see those logs as being human at all. I mean, just having that level of pain involved, it's not even something that researchers are legally allowed to do on animal subjects. There's laws against that. These were people. And now I've been to places like the killing fields in Cambodia and the torture prison associated with the killing fields, the prison hotel in Hanoi and other places like that, and I've felt that same profound sorrow just walking through. And I remember once being in Nanjing, and I decided I wasn't really even going to be able to bring myself to visit the massacre museum there in Nanjing. But being here in this museum, it felt just as devastating. I think it's wrong to compare atrocities, but the feeling they leave you with, that sickness in your soul, is tragically familiar. And by the time I was halfway through the museum, my shock was already turning into a heavy and tiring physical sickness. And this wasn't just confined to the labs. The sickness that I felt turned into a mix of disbelief and even some anger when I learned that this research really was used. The data from Unit 731 731 was literally weaponized. The Japanese military actually deployed those biological weapons against many Chinese cities and villages. They would fly planes over places in Zhongyang and Henan provinces and drop porcelain bombs filled with plague-infested fleas. They dropped these flea bombs onto a food market to kill as many people with the plague as possible. I mean, can you even believe that? In the 20th century, they contaminated water supplies with cholera, which killed many more. These weren't military targets. They were attacks on civilians, causing real devastating epidemics that killed tens of thousands of people. The experiments in labs were just the testing phase of a campaign of germ warfare. And I learned that the Japanese army at the time was actually disappointed that they were only killing tens of thousands. The number was a failure to them. They felt they needed to be killing many more than that. And then, perhaps the most morally complex part of the whole story was the aftermath. When Japan surrendered in 1945, the members of Unit 731 were ordered to destroy the facilities and escape. But the leader, Shiro Ishii, and his top scientists were able to cut a deal and save themselves. The United States and also the Soviet Union wanted that data. In the emerging Cold War, this research on biological weapons and frostbite was seen as a strategic goldmine. So in a secret deal that mirrored the American recruitment of Nazi rocket scientists, the US government granted Ishii and his entire team full immunity from war crimes, prosecutions, and in exchange for every single page of their data. So just think about that as I'm running towards the amazing opera house here. The perpetrators of some of the most grotesque medical crimes in history were never even held accountable. They were protected. Of course, this meant that victims and their families, and China more generally, were denied any justice for these crimes against humanity, all for a Cold War advantage to help develop weapons of mass destruction. That data, paid for with an unimaginable suffering, was used to create weapons so terrible that they were eventually outlawed. And the irony is that much later, the USA took Iraq to war over suspicion that Saddam Hussein might have held a range of biological weapons, some of which could be traced back to the very programs that benefited from the Unit 731's data. Learning all of this, standing in that museum, I felt a sense of betrayal that compounded that horror. It showed that the evil of Unit 731 wasn't just the experiments themselves, but the secretive events that followed, which decided that this terrible knowledge was too valuable to lose or to punish the researchers over. So we left the main museum building and walked briefly around what was left of the ruins of the actual facility, in the rain of course, the foundations, the boiler house and the office block. But Cece and I were both exhausted, emotionally drained, and we really didn't stay very long. We walked back to the subway in silence and went back to the buzz of Zhongyang Street, carrying this huge weight, with us by then. After this run, Cece and I actually saw that big budget Unit 731 movie that has just been released globally, and we both felt it kind of missed the mark by trying to fit this horror into a sometimes goofy hero versus dumb villains story. It softened what should have been and lost the devastating, sobering truth of what we felt in the museum. It showed me just how hard it is to tell this story right. So I hope that I did actually do it some justice, and that's why I hope above all else that people in Japan, and especially young Japanese, can find a way to learn this true history. And that's not to express hate or anything like that, but just give an understanding and to understand why so many people across China and even Asia are still waiting for a full, sincere and official recognition of this past. Because true peace isn't just built on forgetting, but on a shared understanding of truth. Phew, okay. So now I know this history is a very heavy piece of Harbin's story, but it's a piece that shouldn't be ignored. And now, as we approach the end of this run and this fantastic new opera house ahead of us, it's time to bring all of these things together. You got the Russian Empire, the Japanese occupation, the vibrant modern city, which we can now see, and its people, and talk about what Harbin really is, because I don't want you to think that Harbin is a bad place just because that part of its history was terrible. I also want you to remind you that Harbin is much more than what happened in Unit 731. But anyway, I'm going to end the voiceover here as I run around the opera house and see some things and say goodbye live into the camera. Okay, so on with the run. Wow. So this is the Harbin concert hall. It's huge. And I'm nearly finished my 10K. What's that? I love what? SEO? I don't know what SEO is. Help me out. So there's another part of it over here. So I'll wait till I get a bit closer. Future. It's I'll do a bit of a lap around. This is such a strange environment. That's a 10k. I want to go around and see what's on the other side. I'm sure you do too. So I'll keep going a bit more. Whew. What's happening here? Nice. I'm going to go over to these people. Yeah. Hello, 早上好. Hello. Hello. 你会英语吗? Ooh, we're going to do some dancing. Alright, I'm going to sign off here with this backdrop of beautiful Harbin ladies dancing. And yeah. Oh, well, stop my watch, wait. Here we go. 10.25. Okay, they're a bit loud. They're always loud. All right, so if you enjoyed that, if you're still here, first of all, if you made it all right to the end, well done. I'm actually pretty tired. It's hotter than I thought. I thought Harbin was supposed to be a cold place. Anyway, so yeah, if you're here, please don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment for anything that you saw that you're interested in. The Chinese side, the Russian side, the modern side, and everything in between. Please let me know what you think. Oh, I can go up there. There's the stairs up there. I'm hungry too. But anyway, again, really helps me out. I'm embarrassed to say I've only got 159 subscribers to date. I really need more than that. Please help me out. Please subscribe. And I'll sign off now. Actually, I might just zoom up here, see what's to look at. Oh no, it's closed off. There's a barrier up there. So we won't bother with that. Those people have just realized as well. Okay, goodbye from me. And oh, by the way, no, not yet. So if you keep going that way, you get to the winter ice park where they have this spectacular, amazing ice city. And a bit further than there, that way, again, is the huge Harbin indoor ski center. It's the biggest indoor ski center in China. It's like 10 times the size of the Guangzhou one, which I've been to. So I'm really excited to check that out. So I'm going to put a video up on the screen now, and hope to see you in there. So good. All right, thanks again. See you later. Bye bye. Zaijian. I don't know how to say goodbye in Russian, but anyway, bye.